Come out, you bitch. Let's be honest, the sequel probably isn't going to come out anytime soon. They say early next year, but nah. Not that it needs to. Obviously, the developers' lives are more important here. Making a game is already difficult. Imagine trying to make one knowing that at any moment a foreign army could just burst through your doors with a fucking rifle to your face. I hope y'all pull through over there, man. I can't imagine that type of stress. On a more unserious note, it's about time we check out a hood classic. Not an American hood, an Eastern European hood. Seriously, it seems like every Slav champions the fuck out of this game. It's like their goddamn Ocarina of Time or something. What is that game? Well, you see the goddamn title. Today, I'm taking a look at STALKER Shadow of Chernobyl. First game in the cult classic STALKER series that's somewhat based off that Andrei Tarkovsky film of the same name. And when I say somewhat, I mean it shares the lore of the film and nothing else. Anyone that's seen it knows that it's not exactly something that screams, we should make a video game out of this. It's this really slow-paced art film about three guys in a radioactive zone monologuing about human desires. How you would make gameplay out of that is beyond me and even beyond GSC Game World because they didn't even attempt to touch any of this. Instead, they created a first-person shooter that's essentially a series of fetch quests. Of course, there's a bit more to this game than that, but the point is that you don't need to watch this to enjoy this. I still would recommend watching the film on its own though, it's actually pretty good. But enough of all that. What the hell is a stalker? What does Chernobyl have to do with this? And why does this place look like a Dark Lord took over? So STALKER takes place sometime after 06 where another Chernobyl disaster happens in the area. However, instead of a nuclear explosion, this one is a bit more mystical. Reality itself seems to be breaking around the area with altered physics and weird anomalies all around. The area was already plagued by radiation, but along with this weird ass shit has turned many into weird mutated freak monsters. This new hellscape is called the Zone and, despite the dangers, has attracted many to traverse it for valuables and research. Those that have chosen to explore these lands are called stalkers, which is where the main character comes in. You play as the Marked One, a stalker who awakens inside the zone after getting struck by lightning. He suffers from amnesia with the only clue to his identity being this stalker mark and a mission in his PDA saying kill Stelok. Who the hell is Stelok? Well, that's what playing the game is for. From here, you explore the zone, do various things for various people in order to get whoever that is, and also get deeper into the zone and uncover its secrets.
Well, good hunting, Stalker.
So yeah, one look at these environments and character models and you already know that this is a mid-2000s FPS game. Not that that's a bad thing. This game has aged better than most due to its overwhelmingly dreary atmosphere. Just booting this game up and you're presented with this dreary ass menu screen with this ultra dramatic music playing that feels like the whole world has already ended. And then you get into the game proper, and yeah, this ain't no land of rainbows and sunshine. Even the dogs are scrapping by out here. Wastelands of dead grass, every building being broken down, gray skies 24/7, the creepy ambient music that plays when you're just walking around. Hell, sometimes there's no music and there's just random faraway sound effects that are sometimes even creepier. All this does a lot to get you immersed, and the constant darkness does a lot to hide this game's graininess. I want to say that this place looks otherworldly, but I had someone tell me that the rural parts of Ukraine just look like this in general, which, if that's true, that's wild. I can understand why so many of these dudes carry a bottle of vodka. Gotta cope somehow, right? And yeah, you could tell that this is a mid-budget European game because boy, the jank is real. I'm talking about some buttons not working, enemies shooting through walls, enemies clipping through environments, the constant thing where enemies are shooting at you sideways. Yeah, don't be fooled by this guy. It may look like he's shooting forward, but he is aiming at me. This is pretty hilarious, and along with NPCs constantly repeating their lines, does add a bit of funny charm to this game, but all that other stuff probably should have been ironed out. Apparently this game is notorious for crashing for some people too, which I was luckily able to avoid for some reason. Thank the Lord, because this is one of those games that doesn't have an autosave, so I can easily see myself losing 30 plus minutes of game time if it did crash, and boy, I would have been steaming. But jank aside, it is pretty impressive what they were able to do here. If this game wasn't so unpolished with how it ran, I honestly would think it was a Bethesda game or something because these maps are fairly detailed and expansive. Wouldn't be surprised if this game wasn't influenced from modern Fallout because it definitely has a similar aesthetic, although this game is clearly more striking with its overall despair. The game makes a pretty good impression off vibes alone, but that's immediately shattered when you start playing the game. Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The first hour of this game feels like shit. The shooting is terrible. You're armed with this pea shooter that enemies just do not react to. Feels like you're firing blanks. There's like no audio and barely any visual feedbacks on whether enemies are getting hit or not. Things do start to change when you get your first rifle and enemies start to go down quicker, but from here you get into bigger gunfights where enemies are much further away, and this is where the hitboxes really show themselves to be inconsistent. You'll be dumping whole clips into motherfuckers only for them to just drop down seconds later. With frontal combat feeling so sluggish, you would think it's the game telling you to approach situations more indirectly with a stealth mechanic of some kind, but nope. You can sneak up on guys, but that's even more inconsistent than the gunfights. Not to mention, it's not even a good habit to get into as this game just turns into Rainbow Six 2/3 in, but more on this later. It's a good thing that this game has more going on than just the combat. The general flow of this game isn't too different from any other open world game. You're given quests by NPCs that mostly amount to fetch quests and killing guys. Sounds generic, but these simple tasks are made way more tense in this game. This is where all the survival shit comes in. Damn near everything in this game is hostile and can kill you quick. And I'm not just talking about enemy stalkers, but the environment itself. Every zone is contaminated out the ass with radiation that you can only detect by this crackling sound. There's weird anomalies that can take huge chunks of your health if you don't watch out for them. And of course there's the mutated wildlife that all want to smoke. The world feels appropriately dangerous, which is amplified with the limited inventory space. Carry too much shit and your guy acts like he never ran a lap in his life. Carry too little, now this shit feels like a survival horror where every resource matters. And to pile on that stress, guns can jam up mid-fire, your character can bleed out, and your character gets hungry, which also affects stamina. Adds a layer of tension not just to each encounter, but existing in this world broadly. The fact that all the NPCs have names and can die forever to things around them also makes this world feel way more alive than most. Like I remember befriending one guy early in the game, only to come back later to find him deceased. Feels like the world is still moving even when the player isn't present. Something you're reminded of with this quest system. Time is always moving forward and you can actually fail missions if you don't return to the quest giver in time. Yeah, despite completing a mission, you can still fail. What type of bullshit? Something that's pretty easy to do with quests taking you all over the damn place. God damn, they should have renamed this Walker Traveler Chernobyl because I swear to God half of this game is simply this. There's so much walking. The amount of backtracking puts Resident Evil to shame. Main reason why I never really bothered with the side quests in this game. It's such a pain in the ass just getting to them. Not to mention that this ain't really an RPG where you're getting experience for stats and whatnot. You get cash and once in a while some new equipment, but that's about it as far as I saw. Reason why I never really understood the comparisons to Fallout. There's way more actual role-playing in those games, and this one becomes heavily focused on the shooting 2/3 in. I mentioned how inconsistent the shooting was earlier, but what I didn't mention was just how brutal the gunfights in this game are. Yeah, make no mistake about it, this game is hard. This ain't no Call of Duty where you could just brute force your way through hordes. No, you're going to be tilt shooting around every corner because you can't can't take no type of damage. From the end of the Dark Valley mission forward, all the enemies you face are just better than you, stronger armor and noticeably more powerful weapons. You quickly learn that the only reliable way to get past these assholes is to constantly headshot them. But with all the technical issues I mentioned, you already know that's easier said than done. It could be overwhelming, but strangely enough, this is where the shooting actually started to click for me. The heightened difficulty plays into the constant feelings of dread that this game is always trying to get across. The amount of anxiety I feel just peeking a corner is always high, knowing that all it takes is just one solid headshot from these assholes to kill me. However, overcoming this through sheer tact and patience feels immensely rewarding, especially since the enemies in this game actually value their own lives and won't just bum rush you. At least most of the time. When injured, these motherfuckers will actually take cover and try to get a shot on you more sneakily. What's scary about this is that you can barely hear these dudes run up on you, which creates even more tension. Despite all this though, I don't think it was a good idea to hard pivot towards this being the focus for the final stretch. It's just pure corridor shooting against what seems like an endless amount of guys, and they're all bullet sponges, made even worse when you try to go for the true ending. Not only is it tedious and frustrating, but it also doesn't really fit a game like this. For the most part, you're taught to be this cautious scavenger, taking things slow, gathering what you need, and only really engaging in crazy fights when necessary. This stretch is like, yeah, nah, you're BJ Blazkowicz now, go wild. And this symptom of this game not really knowing what it wants to be is why I never really fell in love with it like many others. Technical issues aside, there's way too little in terms of interesting characters, environments, and player experimentation in order for it to be a satisfying immersive sim. It's also way too disempowering to excel as a traditional first-person shooter. Not saying that every game needs to fit neatly within certain genres, I just think that this game would have been better if the vision was more coherent. The fuck? So the twist on who Stelok is pretty whack, but it's whatever. Much of the intrigue I had was what the hell was deeper into the zone and what caused this mess to begin with. You're told about something called the Wish Granter, which is this artifact that's able to grant whatever wish you desire if you get to it. After pushing through a shitload of monolith, the player character eventually does. And depending on certain player conditions, your guy can wish for more money, world domination, or for the zone to be gone and more. It's all bullshit though. Each wish gets twisted to screw over the player in some way. Initially getting one of these endings feels incredibly disappointing, but that's kind of the point. For one, none of these are true endings, but more importantly, it goes back to the same message that the book and movie were giving, that sometimes what we desire the most isn't actually what we want. This game's a lot harsher about the message than the movie is. There, the big twist was that a stalker named Porcupine reached the room to wish his dead brother back to life, but instead of getting that wish granted, he got a shitload of money instead, as that was his true desire. Here, you suffer through the zone only to lose a part of yourself no matter what wish. Not to mention, throughout the whole game, you're fighting the manifestation of this through these monolith guys. Former stalkers that were probably after the wish granter like you, but ended up becoming slaves to it. It's a pretty brutal end, but tonally, it fits better than the open-ended philosophical approach of the movie. I do think that the movie was a bit more clever with it, however, it doesn't really matter since all these are just fake endings anyway. The true ending can only be reached after talking to this doctor guy who tells you that the wish granter is one big trap and should be avoided. If you get access to the secret lab in Chernobyl, that's when the true culprits behind this madness show themselves. These guys reveal themselves to be seed consciousness, a sort of super consciousness that's made up of the mind of 7 scientists who thought they could somehow bring world peace by doing this. Yeah, obviously that didn't happen. The Wish Granter, the Brain Scorcher, the Monolith faction, all of these things were created to hide this truth and keep people out. Here, the player has the choice to join them and potentially stop the zone from expanding, but live in their hive mind, or just kill them and see what happens. Yeah, not exactly a hard choice here. All of this shit is their fault, and who knows if their experiments won't just lead to more chaos. This is definitely a more video game feeling ending, going through a really tough level and defeating the big bads and saving the day. Don't really have much to say about this. It's a more Paramount end, but not as interesting if you ask me. The game sets up a really cool premise from the jump with the mystery of the zone, Stelok, and all the different factions, but doesn't really do much to get you emotionally invested. There's barely any characters of note, as 95% of them are just copy and pasted mask guys, and most of the quests just have you going to places just because. The creepy, oppressive atmosphere is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, which I do like. However, I do need a bit more to latch onto. So yeah, that's Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl. When I think of charmingly janky games, this is one of the first that come to mind. They were really trying to punch above their weight class here, and it didn't always hit, but they still got a good amount of blows in to still be worthwhile. The atmosphere is great, the gameplay is tense, and it's pretty damn original even to this day. You're not going to find many other games that play like this one. Reason why I still recommend it despite all the horrendous bugs. Anyway, that's all I gotta say about this one. Do the usual stuff to boost this video in the algorithm, and until next time.